Of course, the big story that we have been covering here as we do get more and more information coming in, that is the Israel-Iran conflict. And you can see some of the latest details right there on the left-hand side of your screen. As of right now, we have learned of 3 confirmed deaths after Iran's attacks that did happen in several waves just hours ago here. The information coming in from Israeli officials. However, we also know there are dozens of injuries that have been reported. We've also learned from Reuters and other sources that U.S. forces were involved in helping Israel to intercept those Iranian missiles. And top commander scientists among the more than 70 people that are believed to be dead in Israel's initial strikes, those preemptive strikes that took place a little more than a day ago. That information coming from Iran's ambassador to the United Nations. Again, a lot of information that is continuing here to come in this morning, so I do want to get right to it. We do have Enia Krivine at the Foundation for Defensive Democracies joining us now live from Israel. Thank you so much for taking the time, as always, to be here with us, and of course, doing so while staying safe.
Thank you so much, Josh. Always a pleasure.
Of course. And first off, I do want to ask you what the situation is like where you are on the ground right now and what it's been like over the past 36 hours or so.
Sure. So I'm in Jerusalem, in Israel's capital right now. I'm currently at a hotel in the center of town. And I can tell you that as of Thursday morning and Thursday afternoon, there was no indication that there was an imminent war coming, an imminent escalation. And so on Friday morning, June 13th at 3 a.m., when the whole country awoke to a siren, I think many assumed, like me, that it was a Houthi missile, something that Israelis have become almost accustomed to in the past 18 months. Everyone went to their safe zone, pulled out their phone to try and understand what was going on. And it was a very unusual alert that was coming from Home Front Command. It didn't say Houthi drone, Houthi missile, like what many were expecting. It said stay in a safe place until further information is available. So we were all, humming and hawing, wondering what was going on. And sure enough, we started seeing on social media that Israel had attacked Iran. And that is when we understood that the situation was in a period of sharp escalation and that the coming hours were going to be very interesting indeed.
And I believe the image that we're looking at right now is a look over Tel Aviv. We do have many cameras that are kind of shifting back and forth at this hour here. But one thing we heard from Israel's defense minister a short time ago, he did say, quote unquote, Tehran will burn if Iran does fire more rockets here and the attacks continue. What do you make of that statement overall? Anything surprising from it?
I was pretty surprised by that statement. It's not the tone that Israeli officials have been taking until now. Israel is approaching this from a very strategic perspective. The name of the operation is Operation Rising Lion. And what we understand is that it's a nod to the Iranian people who, before the regime, before the 1979 overthrow of the regime, of the government in Tehran, when the Ayatollahs took over and it became this Islamic Republic. Before the Islamic Republic, it was a state that had a huge secular tradition, and the flag was a lion. So this is supposed to be, as we understand it, a nod to the people of Iran to rise up. And you can see from the targeting so far, it's been very, very precise. A massive amount of ordnance, hundreds of targets struck in the past 36 hours, but they are going after military command, nuclear scientists, and military targets. And there have been, as you said, Josh, over 70 casualties in Iran. We understand that most of them are from this target list, this target bank. There have been very little collateral damage, and we understand that that is the intention of the Israeli government. So I think that may have been an offhanded comment. These things happen because it really flies in the face of the spirit of what we've seen so far for the past 36 hours.
One thing that's interesting is, and we are getting a lot of reaction, of course, that is coming in over the past several hours. We're hearing from the Israeli defense minister. We've also heard from the Israeli Air Force. And in general, one thing that was interesting is we heard the quote, the way to Tehran has been paved. What do you make of that comment? Again, as we get all of this reaction that is coming in here.
So Tehran is the seat of the regime. So I think that Tehran can mean many things depending on the context that you use it. But between April of last year, October of last year, and now these strikes in the past 36 hours, Israel has managed to slowly erode Iran's capabilities to defend itself and its military and nuclear program. So you see in the earlier strikes last year, Israel specifically targeted strategic air defense systems that denuded Iran of its ability to defend itself against these type of attacks. And it was a message to the regime. It was, we have the capacity to do exactly what's been happening in the past 36 hours. The signaling has been so clear from Israel and from the US, from the Trump administration. Stand down, get to a good deal, or Israel is going to take out these capabilities. And what we've learned is that in the past few days, maybe as recent as the past 48 hours, Israel learned that there was new intelligence that Iran was rushing towards nuclear capability. Israel shared this information with DC. DC understood what was going on. And from all the indications from Washington and Jerusalem, Washington understood that Israel had the imperative to strike, and so far has not told Israel to stand down. So these strikes have been ongoing, consistent for the past 36 hours. There are sorties coming back and forth, and you've seen that the Iranian retaliations have been coming mostly in the evening for the past 2 nights. We can probably expect that to continue until one side has reached its goals in this conflict.
So at this point right now, is everyone in Israel kind of bracing for more of those as evening gets closer? Do they expect more missiles to be fired, more rockets, drones, all of that in the coming hours here?
100%. We're all ready for another evening with lots of ups and downs. I was in the shelter twice last night, and my fellow people in the country, much more. Tel Aviv was the hardest hit. Seems to be the target of these attacks. It is where a lot of the military infrastructure is, and it's also the most densely populated region in Israel. So as you mentioned, Josh, there were multiple rockets and missiles that were able to come through last night, and we're expecting to see more today. So until, like I said, Israel has strategic goals in this, and that is to destroy and set back Iran's nuclear program. Israel knew that it would be a tough road to go alone. In order to put an end and completely destroy the program, it needs special tools from the United States that Donald Trump seems to be holding back until now. As far as I understand it, Israel can go a long way by itself, maybe 75% of the way, and set Iran back significantly, maybe a year, maybe 2, maybe a little bit more. But in order to actually finish the job, it would need participation and, like I said, special munitions and tools from the US. So it's unclear right now. The million-dollar question is, will the US get involved?
That was going to be my next question here, is how involved? Do we have a full scope yet of how involved the U.S. is currently? You talked about Washington, of course, and the fact that obviously President Trump, his administration, they have not stepped in to say, whoa, hold off, let's not do this right now. They've actually helped in kind of intercepting some of those missiles that were fired at Israel. So do we have a full scope of the U.S. involvement and kind of where it goes from here?
Yeah, so until now, we've seen what we saw in the last 2 Iranian attacks, which is an international coalition of different allies in the region rallying to bring down these drones and missiles that have been lobbed at Israel. And this is a security architecture that the U.S. helped to build in the past several years. It's working well. Iran has lobbed over 200, potentially up to 300 missiles at Israel in the past 36 hours. And a handful have got through. All of the missile interception capabilities are very, very good. They're in the 90s or above. But when you're lobbing hundreds of missiles, some do get through. So it's been a coalition of partners. Definitely the U.S. has been involved. But again, this is going to be standing policy that was also the Biden administration's policy to defend our ally Israel when it's under attack from Iran. The question is, Josh, is whether the U.S. will take it to the next level and potentially deploy not defensive capabilities, but offensive capabilities to take out and finally destroy the jewel in the crown for Iran, which is a massive underground enrichment site called Fordow. This is the main question. As far as we understand it, and there may be surprises here, but as far as we understand it, Israel does not have the capacity to destroy Fordow without U.S. assistance, without a special delivery mechanism, a special aircraft that can drop a massive bomb. It's called a MOP, a massive ordnance penetration, a MOP. So that is what we are all standing by to see, is whether Donald Trump will say, you know what, we have a policy. The policy is that Iran should not get a nuclear weapon. That is longstanding U.S. and Israeli policy, right? So we have a policy. We know that Iran not only was in abrogation of its non-proliferation treaty, we also know that Iran was making a dash to a bomb, and now Tehran, the regime in Tehran, should suffer the consequences. This is not a decision that Trump has made yet, but the Israelis will take it as far as they can on their own.
What do we need to watch for here in the coming hours and days to see exactly how this kind of plays out? What is next? What should folks, maybe not just there in Israel, but also in the U.S., be watching for?
So there's a couple things. First of all, we don't know what the regional proxy game is yet. Luckily, in the past 18 months of war, Israel has been fighting Iran's proxies in the West Bank, in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Syria, and has pretty much leveled the playing field. They've managed to degrade and, in some cases, completely render irrelevant Iran's proxies that it spent billions of dollars with munitions and training and funding over the past couple decades. So Israel's kind of set the scene to be able to focus on Tehran. That's the good news. However, we also know that these proxies, while they've been largely rendered less potent, still do have capabilities. We know that Hezbollah still has rockets. They've said, oh, hey, we're not going to get involved, but we don't know if that changes. The Houthis, they've been sending drones and other munitions, but they haven't escalated the way that they may have, or that they might have, given what's going on between Iran and Israel right now. So there's still the proxy question. The other question is, will Iran activate cells around the world to go after Jewish, Israeli, or potentially American targets? Before this escalation took place on the early hours of June 13th, the Ayatollah said, we have American assets in the region in our crosshairs. This was before the Israeli strike. So we know that Iran has a policy of attacking U.S. assets. We know that Iran has attempted to attack our assets on U.S. soil. They've made targets of our leaders and of our administration in the past. So the question is not necessarily, I think what happens between Tehran and Israel right now is going to look like this kinetic warfare for a while. But the question is, A, what do the proxies do? And B, does Iran go after other Jewish, Israeli, and American targets around the world?
My last question here before I let you go. I do want to pop up this post from Ambassador Mike Huckabee, and he did say, if you hear, quote, Israel is no concern to the U.S., and of course this is related to the U.S. involvement, he said, remember 700,000 Americans live in Israel. That is equivalent to a full house district. More Americans here than in any other country except Mexico. Iran isn't just attacking Israel, but your fellow Americans who live here. Your thoughts on that?
So I thought that was an interesting post. It is one way to look at it, but I think that the more relevant thinking is that the U.S. has assets in the region. The U.S. has big bases and men and women deployed there overseas that are well within range of Iran. I would also say that Iran has never shied away from lethal attacks on Americans, Israelis, and Jews abroad. And you know, this, again, President Donald Trump himself was targeted by the regime in Tehran. So there are Americans in Israel, and that is a concern. But I think that there is also a concern to the homeland in the United States, and also to very important assets all over the region, and including our Arab allies in the region who have also been targeted by the regime.
And it's important to note, as you mentioned, that there were several plots there by Iran to assassinate President Trump in the past here, all related, of course, to Soleimani and a lot of different topics. But that's a whole different issue there. Enia Krivine, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and help break down everything on the ground. Of course, we are glad that you're staying safe. Is there anything else that you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
Sure. I mean, I think the one thing that I always say it's important to keep in mind is that Iran and Israel are facing off right now in an unprecedented way. But we have to remember that Israel is also fighting on other fronts, the West Bank, Gaza, Yemen. It's unclear how things are going to play out on Israel's northern border, whether it's from Lebanon, Syria, or potentially a little bit farther afield in Iraq with the Shiite militias. So Israel's got its eye on the ball. Its focus right now is certainly taking out Iran's nuclear capabilities, but it is also on high alert from many other fronts. And that is something that here it's important to keep in mind.
All right. Enia Krivine there over at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And again, please stay safe out there.
Thank you so much, Josh.